It's Catalyst Grant season at UWM. As a reminder, the Catalyst Grant is offered by the UWM Research Foundation and is funded through charitable donations. It's designed to help researchers develop early-stage technologies and intellectual property with commercial potential. And over the years, the program has demonstrated an impressive track record of follow-on funding. $5.6 million in Catalyst-funded projects have gone on to receive an additional $36.6 million. That's more than a 6x return on investment. We want your work to benefit from this track record, but we can't fund every project. Catalyst is a competitive program. In recent years, we've funded about 1 in 5 applications. In this video, we provide tips that go beyond the basic instructions of the grant application. Tip number 1, make it readable. Yes, I know this seems obvious, but your application is your first impression. You might be surprised by how difficult to navigate applications can put off even the most brilliant reviewers. Here are a few points. Don't be verbose. You have only 3 pages in the abstract and 6 pages in the full proposal, so you need to get to the point quickly. And don't be too technical. Stay away from acronyms and jargon. Even though the reviewers will likely have expertise in your field, you still need to connect the dots for them about your project in an approachable way. Use graphic aids, figures, tables, timelines, flowcharts, but make sure they aren't just thrown in for the sake of it. They should help tell the story by summarizing complex points, making abstract descriptions more tangible, or tying things together. A word of caution on graphic aids, don't make them tiny. If a reviewer needs a magnifying glass to decipher a figure, rethink it. Follow the formatting rules. Keep in mind that reviewers are subject to all the distractions that come along with being humans. The format helps them get into a groove when reading through proposals. Don't make them work harder on yours than your competitors. And finally, get feedback. Ask someone outside your field to read your application and give you feedback on readability. Don't pick someone who will be too nice. You want brutally constructive feedback. Tip number 2, start with the problem. Don't bury the lead. And the lead in your project story is the impact it will have on solving a significant problem. If the reviewer doesn't understand the problem you're trying to solve right away, you'll lose them fast. So start with that. Up front, help reviewers understand the broad magnitude of the problem by providing a few sobering statistics or a well-known example. Make the reviewers feel the problem by telling them who is experiencing it and what it's like for them. Then be more specific about the actual problem your project aims to solve. You might be working on a project that could ultimately contribute to eradicating cancer or reversing climate change, but in reality, what specific challenge in the field is your project chipping away at that could contribute to those big picture challenges? Once you get that across, then you're ready to talk about your solution. Tip number 3, name drop. For Catalyst proposals, it's important to demonstrate that there's a commercial need for the technology you're developing. To be competitive, provide evidence that you've talked with potential end users, customers, and partners to gain an understanding about the business drivers for your innovation. Here's some examples. Do some customer discovery. Talk to people who have a stake in the problem you're solving. Ask them open-ended questions about what's important to them. And be sure to overtly mention what you learned from them in your application. The full proposal requires customer discovery, but it doesn't hurt to mention it in the abstract if you already have some feedback. Another point, identify potential commercial partners. The more specific, the better. You could broadly mention the industry your project is targeting, but everyone's going to do that. At least mention a few specific companies that might be interested in why. Even better, if you have connections with people in those companies, call that out in your application. Seek industry guidance on experimental benchmarks. What does industry need you to prove in your project that will keep them interested in further developments? No doubt at this point, there are lots of directions you can go on the technical objectives for your research. Understanding what potential commercial partners are looking for can help you focus on the parameters that are most likely to set the project on a path to market. And finally, get a letter or two of support. If you talk with potential partners about your project, ask them to provide a letter of support indicating the value they see in it and their openness to collaborating with you in the future. Another suggestion here is to offer to write the first draft of the support letter yourself so they can easily edit it from there. Tip number 4, milestones that matter. For any type of funding, this is important. For Catalyst, I repeat here that including industry-relevant objectives for your experiments will make your application stand out. And provide quantifiable benchmarks and metrics for those objectives. Tell us why those are important in setting you up for follow-up experiments. And finally, be realistic in the scope of work you can do within the time limits and budget of a Catalyst project. Don't try to do too much. Concentrate on a few key objectives that will take you to the next step. Tip number 5, show us the way. Here's a good place to remind you to use timelines and flowcharts to help reviewers visualize your plans. There are a few paths to consider here. One is to map out your funding path. Competitive proposals will show the promise of future return on Catalyst investment. Tell us about grants and other sources of funding that are on your radar to advance your project over the next few years. Be specific. List the opportunities by name and date if you can. Another path to show is the progression of key milestones. What are the technical increments that need to be achieved over time? And what are important commercial milestones you learned about from potential partners? Examples of milestones might include laboratory proof of concept, a series of prototypes, and field or pilot testing, to name a few. And finally, tie it all together. How does the progression of key milestones relate to the funding path you envision? Consider one timeline or table that shows this relationship. In conclusion, a successful Catalyst proposal requires a strategic and well-articulated approach. In addition to the requirements laid out in the abstract and full proposal templates, we hope these extra tips will increase your likelihood of securing funding for your promising research. Please don't hesitate to reach out to the UWM Research Foundation team with questions.